other circumstances that reduce it to a lesser crime. And with that, Mr. Becker, are you ready to give your opening statement?
I'm here.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning once again. Single gunshot wound right to the back of the head. That's what killed Patrick Lyoya on a cold, wet, rainy day back in April 2022. It's almost in the middle, maybe a little bit below the middle. You have an opportunity to see it, I think. But that single gunshot wound is what killed him that day. It's not just me saying that. You're going to hear from Dr. Stephen Cole. He's our medical examiner, and he's going to say he can determine that because when a bullet is fired, a gun is fired, the bullet comes out, it comes out in that puff of smoke, and that puff of smoke contains some gunshot residue. Now, from far away, you're not going to get gunshot residue on anything, but if it's a close shot within a few feet, you're going to be able to tell unless that gun, that barrel of the gun, was in contact or near contact with the back of the head of the individual. And he's going to tell you it was a contact or near contact wound, that gunshot wound, that killed Patrick. The barrel of the gun was on the back of the head. Now, it's not just you have to rely on his testimony about that either. You have an opportunity to see the video. You'll see the video where the defendant who sits before you here today fired that shot. It's on a cell phone video. So to some extent, your job is somewhat easy because you're going to have more video and access to different videos than just about any jury that's ever been around. You'll have a cell phone video. You'll have a body camera video. You'll have an in-car video. You'll have a security camera video from across the street. You'll see different versions of the video in terms of freeze framing videos. You'll have an opportunity to see everything and break this down video by video. One of the troopers, Zach Batchelor, he synchronized these videos. So you have all the videos together when you go to deliberate this case. You have to watch this over and over again, probably more than you wish to. But it's an important piece of evidence. But that's not the only evidence because, as I said, there's evidence that comes from the stand as well. And we'll call witnesses. And it starts out fairly simple because we're going to start out with David Bakuru. He was a friend of Patrick's. He was, Patrick spent the night at his apartment before he left that morning and died. Dave's going to tell you he was hanging out with Patrick. Patrick and him have gone back. They're both African immigrants. They have been together for a few years. They know each other. He spent the night. Ame Tushimi is the other person that was at the apartment. I think him and David were actually roommates at the time. And Ame is the one who actually took the cell phone video that morning. David says, yes, they hung out, they're drinking, having a good time, nothing special, just kind of hanging out like guys do. And so that morning, he had to wake Patrick up. Patrick had told him the night before, he slept on the couch, hey, wake me up, I gotta leave before 8 o'clock, I got something to do. Now there's another individual, Amark, David doesn't remember him, Ame does, kind of says, yeah, we had to take him to his house, or had to take him to work, but just before 8 o'clock, David's gonna say, yeah, we woke him up, Patrick's gotta leave, he left with Ame, they get in Patrick's car, and take off. Now, May's going to tell you, yeah, there was this guy, Mark, we dropped him off at his house, and then we went to see Patrick's own place. Patrick had his own apartment, so they went to Patrick's apartment to kind of check it out. He had just got it, he was kind of excited about it. So they looked at Patrick's apartment, and then they proceeded to leave again, and were driving around. They're going to hear they stopped at like a Walgreens and got some beer. They got some beer, and then they got back in the car and were driving around. Now, from May's perspective, he's the passenger. Patrick's driving his car, sitting in the passenger seat. He's all of a sudden notices there's noises. There's noises going on in the car. The car is making a noise. This isn't like this is an old Nissan Altima or something like that. It's not a great car. So there's noises, and Patrick comments like, "What's going on?" There's noises, and Patrick pulls over to the side of the road. He gets out. Now May's kind of at this point in time, not really paying a whole lot of attention. He's on his phone. But you're going to find out at that point in time, the defendant, as a Grand Rapids police officer, had pulled him over. Was in the process of pulling him over. Now, from a lot of what you're going to get now is coming from the actual body cam, the body cam that's on the officer. Okay? They've got it's on, I think it's on his chest, essentially. It's activated when the overhead lights go on. So at the time Patrick's pulling over, the officers turn on his lights, and Patrick gets out of the car. And you're going to see this interaction between the officer and Patrick at that point in time. Patrick's like, what did I do? And the officer says, get back in the car. The defendant says, get back in the car. What did I do? Now you're going to notice at that point in time that Patrick's first language is Swahili. And there's a definite accent. So the defendant, do you speak English? Patrick says, yes. But the plate doesn't match the car. And that's true. You're going to see evidence that the plate belonged to a Ford Fiesta. This was a Nissan Altima, so the plate did not match the car. You have your driver's license. I need your driver's license. Yes, I have one. Patrick opens the door. looks in, and Ame's in there, and Ame doesn't remember a whole lot, but they look, apparently maybe tries to open the glove compartment box. You can kind of see that from the video. Opens the glove compartment box and looks in there, but there's no driver's license. So Patrick shuts the door. Now they're standing in the road, it's a residential area, and Patrick starts to just simply walk away. The defendant grabs him and says, nope, 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 you're under arrest, and Patrick breaks free. Breaks free, kind of does a spin move, and then runs around the back of the car. You'll see this on the video, on the Bodycam video, and runs around the car. He's wearing flip-flops, and his pants are falling down, and it's kind of raining, and he runs, he gets all the way to the driveway that the cars had parked, maybe 5 yards, 10 yards at most away. It's like a 6-second chase. The defendant tackles him from behind, takes him down, and then there's a struggle. There's a wrestling match going on at that point in time. The defendant's telling him, stop resisting, stop resisting. Patrick is then trying to get out. Now you're going to hear from Wayne Butler. Wayne Butler is the homeowner where the driveway where this initial tackle takes place. This is a residential area. He's going to say it's kind of unusual for a car to get pulled over in a residential area. It's surrounded by Kalamazoo and some busier streets. And he's kind of, that's kind of weird to see a car getting pulled over there. So he actually goes out. You'll actually see him on the cell phone video now, because at this point in time, Ame realizes what's going on, and he gets out of the car and starts videotaping on a cell phone. So now you have a combination of something's going on a body cam, you get some from the in-car video, you also have the body cam. But you have Wayne's testimony, and he's probably the one that sees it the most in terms of going for the whole thing. So he comes out, and you'll hear him in the video. He's trying to talk Patrick down. Hey, I'm a black man too. I'm a black man. You gotta calm down. Don't reach out to Ame. Ame, hey, tell him to calm down. This is a bad situation. Patrick doesn't listen. Patrick, you see him push himself up, and then he walks. He walks with the defendant holding on. He walks essentially across the front yard into the yard of Fred Hunter. Now, Fred's a homeowner too. He notices he doesn't have a ton to add, quite frankly, to all this, but he was there, and we're going to call him as a witness to get his impressions. He heard the struggle, he heard something about a taser, he heard, they heard the gunshot go off, but he's kind of in his house and not paying a ton of attention, but you'll hear what he did have to hear and see that day. So what happens there is then the defendant and Patrick are kind of standing. They're standing essentially in front of Fred's front door. And they're standing in front of that front door, and Patrick kind of is, struggling and spins out of it. So then they're facing each other. The defendant's got one arm on Patrick and one arm, and he decides to bring his taser. Now this is a demonstration of taser. This is what a taser, this is the taser, it's a taser 7. You're going to hear about that. But this is the kind of taser he was using. You actually have an opportunity to see the taser. So he brings that taser out, and he's going to try and tase Patrick. Patrick grabs the weapon. You'll see, this is from the body cam, grabs the taser, grabs his hand, and moves it. Moves it out of the way. The taser discharges. And that's an important piece of evidence right there. The taser discharged the first time. There's no impact. There's nothing, he's not tased. It goes into nowhere. So then the struggle's about the taser. Let go of the taser, drop the taser. You'll hear that repeatedly. There's a number of commands that you'll hear that repeatedly. Patrick goes down, they both go down. They both go down the front yard of Fred's residence. It's raining, it's slippery, the grass is wet, and they struggle. Now Mae's watching this, and you'll hear from Mae. He's probably intoxicated. He's kind of mumbling things, he's not really comprehending what's going on, but he's watching, he's holding the cell phone, and it kind of dips up and down. But you'll watch what happens then. They're struggling, drop the taser, the defendant ends up on Patrick's back. Patrick once again tries to lift up. He starts to lift up and lifts the defendant off, and the feet's off the ground, but the defendant's able to regain control, get back down, and kind of shoves him down, but then he transitions to his firearm. He transitions to a firearm, puts the gun to the back of his head, and shoots him. Patrick collapses almost instantly. He's lying there on the ground. So a lot of what you're going to hear about is regarding this taser. This taser, it looks like it, but it's not a gun. It is not a gun. It's a less lethal weapon. I think in the Grand Rapids the policies and procedures, it's something that's called an electronic control device. That's how it's defined. It's put up there with a device how you control people. Pepper spray, batons. It's not a gun. Even in the taser training manual, it says it's an option that doesn't replace lethal force. So you're going to hear from Brian Childs. Brian Childs is from Axon. Axon is a company that makes the taser. And he's going to tell you what the taser was designed to be less lethal. It's designed to be safely and deployed in a less lethal way. It's been deployed almost 5.5 million times. time, the amount of time it causes some sort of serious injury, I think it's like 99.7% of the time, it does not cause death or serious bodily injury when it's deployed. It's something that can be dangerous, no question, but that's not what it's designed to do. Now he's gonna kind of alleviate some of the things that people think a taser does. Some people think a taser knocks you out. And you see it on TV, somebody gets tased, boom, they knock out, and they're out for 15 minutes. Doesn't do that. That's in TV, this is not in movies. What a taser does is cause neuromuscular incapacitation, NMI. You'll hear about that. The best way to put it, I'm probably putting it wrong, but that's why you have Brian Childs, he's the engineer, he's the expert, he's gonna say it kind of seizes up the muscles, causes the muscles to seize, and so a person can't necessarily operate it, and cause them to be able to function appropriately when it seizes those muscles. So it's only in place, that NMI is only in place for the time was an electrical charge. That charge there, as soon as you release it, the person's kind of released from that. It doesn't cause any ongoing damage. It's not something that somebody is just withering on the ground for. You're gonna see from this taser, they compare it to, what the taser company compares it to is after you're being tased, it's like strenuous exercise. That's one of the things in the video, or the PowerPoint you're gonna see on the taser training PowerPoint. It's like comparable to being strenuous exercise. It's designed not to kill. It's designed not to hurt. It doesn't electrocute you. The amount of electricity is something that combined to like a Christmas tree light. It's not a huge amount. And it doesn't always work. That's another thing. Because one of the things you have to do for a taser to work is there's two prongs. There's two prongs that are shot out. And those prongs have to have sufficient space. You'll see from the video that's got to be about 12 inches. 12 inches is about the minimum amount to get that neuromuscular incapacitation. Anything less, it may cause pain, but it's not going to incapacitate somebody. Right? So it's got to be an appropriate spread. If it doesn't get the appropriate spread, somebody may not suffer from any consequences. If it gets caught in somebody's clothes, it may not work. So one of the training things, you be prepared for it not to work. But they say, just part of the training video, you'll see it says, just like anything, you got to be prepared to transition to something else because it may not work. It may be not something that has an impact when you try and use it because of the variabilities, if you will. Now, one of the things you'll also hear is that when somebody is using a taser, when it goes in, there's a possibility of death or great bodily harm. And they list some of the things that happen. They list that if somebody's tased, they freeze up and they fall in concrete, hit their head. That's one of the things you got to be careful of. If you're around flammable materials, you got to be careful on that. That's something you got to be careful of because electricity could cause it to explode. Pregnant women, there's certain things that you got to be careful of. There's certain target areas. You'll hear about the target areas of the front. The back is actually the best way. The back and splitting the belt line, if you will, is the best way to get for somebody to be tased. The front, not so much, but you can use it in the front. So you got to be careful with it, and it could cause it. But the whole idea of a taser is that's a safe and effective way to do something from a distance. You can use it at close range. You'll see that. But close range defined by taser is about 4 feet, not an arm's length. 4 feet is characterized as close range under the taser policy. They can go almost up to 12 feet because it's designed to give them some space. So you don't get the situations like this one. So Brian Child is going to tell you just about everything you know about the taser and how it is designed to be a safe and effective means of apprehending somebody. But you're also going to hear then in terms of what happens in terms of these defensive tactics. Because defensive things, that's one of the things we're going to hear about from our two police practices experts. Police practices and defensive tactics experts. Because they're going to give you an interpretation, they're going to tell you a little bit more because we're not police officers, but they're going to give you an impression. Seth Stoughton and Nicholas Bloomfield are our two police practices and defensive tactics experts. Seth is maybe more of the practices part. He used to be a police officer. He was a police officer down in the state of Florida for a number of years. And I think we talked all about changing jobs, and he had the idea to change a job and become something else. He became a law professor. He teaches at the University of South Carolina. He teaches criminal justice, criminal procedure. He teaches policing to future law students, people that are going to law school. He also goes over to the undergrad and teaches their criminology department. Now you'll hear all his credentials. He works for the American Law Institute. He's written books. He's written law review articles. These are articles in University of Virginia Law Review, University of Minnesota. He goes into different law reviews and researches this topic, presents all these ideas and stuff because that's what he does for a living. He studies police use of force issues. Nick is maybe the more hands-on individual. He's more was a police officer until 2022. I believe he still serves in the reserves and down in New Mexico, where he's from. And he's more of the hands-on. He's done defensive training, defensive tactics. He's written policies on how to use defensive things that the police officers have. And you're going to hear about. There's different things. A gun is a defensive weapon, a taser, a pepper spray, a baton, all these things that police officers have and use, as well as training on pressure point tactics, hand tactics, stuff like that. It's the hands-on. He's done trainings for this in the state of New Mexico. He's reviewed over 200 different use of force incidents in that state and with his department and other things. That's what he does, the hands-on stuff. So one of the things, kind of summarizing, and it's going to be long, they're going to provide quite a bit of testimony. What they're going to talk about is when they look, how does a police officer, how should a police officer look at a use of force? And they break it down. Does the individual, the person who the force was used against by the police officer, does the individual pose an imminent threat to the police officer? Imminent threat, immediate threat. Is there some sort of imminent threat that that person poses to the police officer? And that's how you determine that. Well, they gotta look at three things: intent, ability, and opportunity. Those are the three things. Does that person have the intent to do something? Does they have the ability to do something? Do they have an opportunity to do something to the police officer that would mandate some sort of use of force? What it boils down to is when you look at this case, I think you're gonna look at this case and that Patrick had an intent to get away. There's an intent to get away, but that's not the intent to do great death or great bodily harm, which would allow the use of deadly force. He had an intent to get away. One of the other things is that he didn't have the ability, because you hear about when you watch the videos, the taser was deployed twice. You have the initial deployment, it was you hear it fire when Patrick grabbed it and moved away. What is deployed a second time when the two of them are on the ground? You're going to hear and see the video that they're on the ground, they're struggling, and then the guy goes, let go of the tape, and there's a pop. Let go of the tape, and he moves away. So the taser was deployed a second time. Brian Childs will tell you that. He says this taser was deployed on two separate occasions. So the prongs that cause the neuromuscular incapacitation were gone. They couldn't be fired again. You can't necessarily reload them because there's wires. You can't just put those back in. So the ability to cause NMI was gone at that point in time. Now the one thing that was left is there is something that's called a drive stun. A drive stun where you take essentially the end of it and you drive it in, make contact. The drive stun does not cause NMI. The drive stun is a pain compliance device and it causes pain, but the drive stun itself does not cause any sort of great bodily harm. It may cause some injuries where the prongs hit or something like that, but it doesn't cause any sort of great bodily harm by the drive stun. And Brian will tell you that. So when you're looking at that, when there are two experts say it, well, the ability of Patrick to do anything was not there because he couldn't shoot the taser had been shot, the drive stun doesn't cause, so there's no intent, there's no ability to cause any sort of harm to the officer. But they also take a look at the officer. The officer's perspective, you kind of take a look at the officer, is a reasonable officer, is a reasonably intelligent officer, and then who's prudent in same or similar circumstances. Would that officer anticipate needing to use force, the force against the person? And you look at all the facts and circumstances, because that's what you gotta do. Reasonableness and all the facts and circumstances presented to the officer at the time. A reasonable officer in that situation would not think death was going to happen, would not think the use of deadly force was necessary, because that's what it's gotta be. It's gotta be necessary. Police officers can arrest. That's not the issue. We're not saying he shouldn't have been arrested. Patrick committed crimes. There's no question about that. He committed the crime. He was driving without a license plate. He didn't have a driver's license. He resisted arrest. He pulled away. You're gonna also find out that he was probably drunk driving too, because his blood alcohol level was like a 3.0 at the autopsy. Okay, so he was drunk driving. So it's not an issue of if the defendant had the right to arrest him. The issue becomes, did he have to shoot him? Did he have to kill him in the course of trying to arrest him? I think when you look at all the evidence, you look at you come to a conclusion, the answer is no. Because what the judges just said, I have to prove things. I break it down into 4 things. I have to prove there's a death. That's your checklist. Was there a death here? Well, that's 100% certain. There's a death. Patrick's dead right now. I have to show that the death was caused by the defendant. That's 100%, no question in your mind. He shot him in the back of the head. The third thing, there's three different areas. There was an intent to kill. When you put a gun to somebody's back of the head, there's an intent to kill there. So those are the three things, are 100%, there's no question. What your issue is and what this trial is about and why you have to decide is that fourth thing or third thing. Was it justified? Was it excused? Or was it lessened to some other crime? When you talk about justified, there's a legitimate good reason for it. Excused as well, yeah, you did all this, but no, it's okay, we're gonna give you a pass. When you take a look at that, when you put all this together, take a look at all the evidence, you have to say, it was not justified. It was unreasonable. Patrick never had an intent to do any harm to the defendant. He never intended to kill him. The evidence is gonna show he never wanted to do anything other than get away that day. And even if somehow he did, he didn't have the ability to cause any great bodily harm, because that taser was not gonna do anything. So what this boils down to is, it was unjustified and unreasonable. It was a crime. There was a crime here. The defendant committed the crime of murder. A police officer can't commit murder. They're no different than anybody else. They're no different than any citizen. They can commit murder, and that is what happened back in April of 2022. The defendant committed the crime of murder. When you listen to all the proofs, and you go back and deliberate, we're gonna ask that you return a verdict of guilty to second-degree murder. Thank you.
And Ms. Hamilton, would you like to give your opening now